welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Mowbray, and in each episode I will discuss the key topics that impact on football coaching in the foundation and youth development phases. Thanks for listening, I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi Tom, welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast. How are you?
Hi Scott, yeah, I'm all good, thank you. Thanks for the invite.
You're more than welcome. It's great to have you on. I've seen a few of your things that you've put out on Twitter, and I've done a bit of research around you, Tom. And you've got a fascinating background, and also what you're currently doing and what you're looking at, I think is fascinating. Certainly, what I'm interested in, and I know our listeners will be too. But before we go too much into that world, if you don't mind, just a bit about kind of your coaching, education, and background and your journey so far.
Yeah, sure. So, from an academic point of view, I started my undergraduate degree in 2012 at the University of East Anglia, where I studied physical education. Didn't want to pursue the route into PE teaching. So after I finished my undergraduate degree, I moved to Loughborough University for a year where I studied a master's in sports coaching. And when I was at Loughborough, that's where I really was fascinated about the academic and sort of research side of coaching and coach development and coach education. So after Loughborough, I moved back to University of East Anglia to start my PhD, which looked at mentoring in sports coaching and specifically how coaches become mentors. And then in June this year, I secured my first full-time job in academia as a lecturer in sports coaching and pedagogy at the University of Essex. So that's my academic background, but from a coaching perspective, I hold a UEFA B license and FA Youth Award. My coaching background has primarily been in the foundation phase, working at organisations such as Leicester City, Norwich City. Over the past few years, had the pleasure of working for the FA as a coach mentor, so supporting coaches from that aspect as well. So yeah, that's something I've really enjoyed. I'm not actively coaching at the minute, but something I'm always going to look to get back into at some point. So
a couple of questions. What sports did you play?
So growing up, football was my main sport. Badminton as well, I enjoyed quite a lot. Don't play so much anymore. I stopped playing sort of 11-a-side football a year or two ago and just sort of stick to 5-a-side now with friends, but I'm more focused on my running nowadays. That's kind of my predominant way of keeping fit. So yeah, go for runs in the morning and get prepared for a day in front of the laptop.
How come you chose to do your PhD around the subject of mentoring?
So when I was doing my master's, I was very interested in how coaches learn and develop, and a lot of the modules we studied focused around coach education, and this idea of mentoring seemed, really appealed to me. It's something that I'd experienced as a practitioner, and there seemed good potential to understand this area in a little bit more detail. More specifically, I think within football and within sport, we have this assumption that if you are a good athlete or a good player, you'll become a good coach. But then there's also this assumption that if you are a good coach, you'll become a good coach educator or coach developer or coach mentor. And I wanted to explore that area in a little bit more detail, so understand how coaches transition from working with players to working with other coaches, because it's a very different skill set. So I saw a gap in the research, if you like, and luckily the FA were interested in my research as well. So I had the opportunity to conduct my research on the FA Coach Mentor Programme.
And it's such a valid point that it seems to be historical, and not just in sports, but in many industries. I don't know if it's global, certainly in the UK, that you almost get promoted based on what you can currently do, not necessarily what you need for the next role you're going to be doing. And you do see that obviously with moving from sports playing to coaching, and then from coaching to mentoring. So I'm sure we'll dig around that a bit more as we go through some of these questions, but I can understand that must have been a fascinating topic. And just before we look at that in more detail, then just your current role then, you're at University of Essex right now and you're lecturing?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it, and how long is your first year or?
Yeah, so I only got the position in June. So I was very lucky that as soon as I sort of finished my PhD in May, and then the next month began at Essex. So yeah, looking forward to working with a range of students who are studying a sports performance and coaching undergraduate degree or a master's in coaching science. So going to be working with a range of, so it'll be a good opportunity. Obviously, it'll be challenging initially working online and the issues with COVID at the minute, but we're going to have to adapt our teaching approaches. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I was going to say it's an interesting time to get into that world. Right, well, I mean, in most businesses, things are a bit different to they might have been previously, but certainly in education and lecturing, where you might have to do maybe, I don't know, I'm guessing more maybe virtual lectures and just a different setup completely, and the students maybe haven't had the time to bond together like they were done under normal circumstances. So, but I guess for you, at least, there's no previous experience, so it's all new anyway.
Yeah, definitely. We have the same challenges as the students have as well. But you're right. In sport degrees, obviously, we like to have that practical element. We try and bridge the theory to practice divide. But those practical sessions, obviously, we can't run as we would like to at the minute. So the focus is more on the theory for now, with sessions over Zoom and other things. But we'll try and make it as interactive and as engaging as possible. So I'm sure the students will definitely get something out of it, I hope.
I'm sure they will. Well, congratulations on the role, and I'm sure you'll be cracking at it. But yeah, I bet you can't wait to get your teeth into it and get starting. So good luck with it. I mean, you mentioned you've done a bit of coaching before, and maybe not so much now, but you've done before in the foundation phase. I just wondered, because it's quite interesting when you get a guest on, you can make assumptions about, because of their education path or their experiences, what kind of coach they might be and what their values might be, but that can be wrong often. So I wondered if you kind of outlined if you had a coaching philosophy or what your principles might be around coaching. I'm not saying necessarily kind of what formation you would play or your game model, but just in the sense of just, you're kind of, how do you describe your style or approach to coaching, and what things would you say kind of fundamental to you when you're in that space?
So for me, I would like to think I always gave a lot of ownership to the players. So I tried to be what we might call a learner-centered coach, if you like, where I didn't want to be seen as the dictator, telling players what to do and when to do it. I'd like to think that my sessions were informed, loosely by game-based practices. So try and situate learning within games, lots of scenario and problem-based learning, opportunities for group work and teamwork, because I really value players and athletes learning off each other and coming up to solutions to problem themselves, rather than me giving the answer all the time. So I'd like to think my practices were predominantly structured around that kind of format, lots of games, lots of group work and discussion. And really my philosophy, centers around that learner-centeredness and hoping that players can take ownership and take autonomy and take responsibility for their own learning, as well as, me providing the answers at times when they might need it. So that's what I'd like to think. Obviously, unfortunately, coaches have quite a low awareness of their own practice. So my players might say the complete opposite. But that's how I'd like to approach things. And as I say, I worked a lot with the foundation phase. So under 9s, under 10s. I think the oldest I ever sort of worked with was kind of under 14s, 15s. So that's kind of, the approach I'd use with all of those ages, really. Especially as players get more older and they understand the demands of the game, the tactics of the game and things like that. You can give a bit more freedom, but players when they're young, they need to be creative, they need to experiment, and they need to learn through mistakes, as well as learning through my guidance and support as well.
And I guess taking that approach, it helps with engagement, doesn't it? The players get engaged if they feel they're part of the journey a bit more, then you get the extra buy-in. Did you find that by having that approach with the players?
Yeah, I think so, because it's like, I don't know, when you're at school, if you sit in a lesson all day and just have someone talk at you, and you're not involved in the learning process, you're not involved in activities or tasks, the retention longer term is probably less. But actually, if you're asking the players to come up with solutions, provide them with a situation in a game, what would you do in this situation? So, lots of problem-based learning. So you might have a game situation where one team is 2-0 up but has a player less, and the other team is obviously 2-0 down but they have a player more. So can they come up with their own solutions to get the result that they want, whether that be getting 2 goals to get level or to hold on to the lead, and you're allowing the teams to come up with their own solutions to the problems which you're posing. So they're involved in the learning process, and I think longer term their learning will benefit.
And where's that come from, Tom? Is that something that you got through doing the coaching badges, or was it something that you got for your own experience, or was it because of your own experience as a player and being coached? How did your philosophy get shaped, would you say?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think if I look back to my playing experiences, and I never played at a high level. It was nothing more than just local teams and school teams. It was nothing more than that. Was never coached that way. I can certainly say that very much focused on being involved in block block practices, lots of repetition, very much being told what to do, where to go, etc. So often you see with coaches that they are socialized, where they tend to coach how they were coached before. But I think I've been quite lucky in this sense that through my education and through, education in terms of the coaching qualifications as well as academia, I've been able to research and explore different approaches to coaching, and would like to think that I've now had the opportunity to experiment with them and try and see what works. And I think what's important in coaching is that there isn't a best way, there isn't a one size fits all. So I think it's important as coaches to experiment and to try out, different practice designs, different behaviors, different methods to see what works and why. And an individual's coaching philosophy is something which is shaped over time and will constantly develop. But ultimately, we all have those values which underpin what we do and why. And, I really value teamwork and individuals being part of the learning process. So that's always kind of been a constant, I guess.
And before we look maybe around the main theme of the podcast today, which is kind of around coach education, that mentoring world, just I wondered how your coaching badge journey was then, how you found going through the badges. I assume you did level 1, level 2, UA for B, maybe I don't know if you did youth modules or not, but how did you find that? And we can be constructive, but was it a smooth journey? Did you love every minute and think actually this is perfect, or was there things you think actually this was better or it could have been different in different ways?
So I first started, my first coaching qualification, my level 1 was in 2011. So I was only 17 at the time when I first started my level 1. And I think when I first got into coaching, I can honestly say I was a badge hunter. So I thought, I need to go through all the qualifications. Yeah, we want to go through all the qualifications as quickly as possible. Okay. So within a 2-year period, I completed my level 1, my level 2, as well as my youth modules 1 and 2. And I think even a goalkeeping level 1 was thrown in there somewhere as well. So initially, I tried to get all these badges as quickly as possible, because I thought, maybe they'd get me jobs, maybe they would give me status, maybe they would, probably I was thinking about my learning was maybe bottom of the list, to be honest. I probably did the courses for the wrong reasons, and I can reflect and say that honestly in hindsight now. So what was interesting then is, I got my level 2 in the youth modules, but then I didn't start my UA for B until I think it was 2017. So I had a 5-year gap, I suppose, where I wasn't involved in any formal coach education in football whatsoever. And then I came to my B license, and I completed my full youth module 3 as well in 2015. So I had a 4 or 5 year gap from any coach education. So my personal experiences have always been quite positive. I personally really enjoyed going on the courses. I found the tutors to be inspiring. I enjoyed the discussions with other coaches, especially on my B license, where we had coaches from all over the country. It wasn't a localized delivered course. I had the opportunity to talk to coaches who are working in a range of different domains and practice settings, academy football, girls football, first team in the adult game. So those opportunities are really valuable to network and meet contacts. So personally, no negative experiences. However, from my kind of research background, I've began to understand that sometimes coach education doesn't always meet the needs of all the learners, and there definitely are some areas we can look to improve on.
Okay, then. Well, look, if it's all right with you, we'll get on the real key topic of looking at coach education and what it's all about. So, not to ask what might look like an obvious question, but it's, again, not to make any assumptions. It's just good to know when we talk about coach education, what people think that might be. And you're obviously very close in this world. I wondered for you, kind of, what do you see? What is coach education? How would you summarize it?
So I think if we take a step back and think about how coaches learn generally, and through the research that's been done over the past 10, 20 years, generally we can say that coaches learn through 3 different types of learning. So we have formal learning, informal learning, and what we might call non-formal learning. So formal learning will refer to higher education degrees, coach education courses, where there's some sort of assessment or qualification at the end of it. We have non-formal learning, which may be attending seminars, coaching conferences, CPD events, things like that. And then we have the informal learning, which is learning through experience, observations, discussions, reflection, all those kind of things there. So we know that predominantly informal learning is the most significant behind how coaches learn. So coaches learn whether they like it or not, through coaching, through watching football, talking to other coaches. Coaches are always learning about coaching and how to coach. However, if we rely solely on our experience and rely solely on the things we accept taken for granted, the norms, the beliefs around, if we restrict ourselves to the people we surround ourselves with and just our experience, and that can be problematic because we're not looking at different approaches. We're not maybe critically reflecting on what we do and why. Perhaps there are other ways of doing things. So for me, I think the role of coach education, as formal coach education, it's only a small part of the coaching journey. Because what we say, a level 1, level 2 course, in terms of hours, well, that's only, 20, 30, 50 hours of course. And when you think that a coach started to learn to coach when they were an athlete, they socialized into these beliefs about what coaching looks like. And then obviously all the practical experience on the grass. Coach education is never going to compete with those informal experiences. So I suppose the role of coach education for me is to get coaches to critically reflect upon what they currently do and why they currently do it. So understand their philosophies, understand the values and beliefs which underpin their practice, as well as making them aware of new approaches or different ways of doing things. It's not the role of coach education to say, you should do things this way. That's not what coach education is about. It's just about opening coaches' eyes to different approaches. And I think that's the main thing, and getting coaches to see the bigger picture of coaching, I think, for me.
You've got formal, informal and non-formal, and you're saying that really it's probably the informal stuff you said that has the most influence on coaches?
Definitely, because I think if you look at it, informal learning, refers to practical experience, observing, discussions. Coaches will spend so many more hours engaging in those informal learning activities than they will in a formal learning activity. So by default, I suppose, coaches are more likely to learn through, trial and error, as you say, or learn experientially, through experience.
Is one of the challenges with that then the fact that sometimes as coaches, and I'm sure I'm like this, I don't always know that I am learning, or that maybe I'm picking up things, good or bad, potentially, not always. Where if you go on a course or something, or you read a book, you're applying yourself in the moment to that education, and you're critically evaluating it and making your own judgments there. But at least you're in the moment. I guess there's some things where I'll be learning by watching a coach or picking something up, but I don't always know that I'm actually picking it up, and it may become part of my coaching practices almost subversively without me even knowing it. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, Scott. And I think what we have to remember, it's the same, I suppose, with the players and athletes that we're working with, is that learners will always learn. So learning is a natural part of life. And whether we realize it or not, we might be learning, unconsciously and picking up norms and picking up beliefs and ideas without realizing. And there's this great quote which sort of suggests that coaches are magpies. So when we see something shiny that we like, we kind of latch onto it and grab it and apply it to our practice. And we're doing this all the time. We see a coach deliver a session, you think, oh, that looks good, I'll jot that down. Or, you see you see a video on YouTube or whatever it may be. So a lot of the time we're nicking things, we're seeing things, and you're right, perhaps we're not realizing, what we are being subjected to, or what we are, sometimes we don't understand the appropriateness of what we are seeing to our own practice. So this is probably one of the biggest issues with novice coaches or new coaches. They might type in on YouTube training sessions, and they watch a video of Barcelona doing a rondo or doing a practice, and then they try it with their under-9s group and wonder why it doesn't work. Or you're not reflecting on the appropriateness of that practice for the athletes and players you're working with. So I think you're right. Learners do learn naturally, and we learn unconsciously as well as consciously. But I think what it really heightens is the importance of reflecting and critically reflecting on any learning opportunity we engage with, whether it's a discussion with our friend, whether it's attending a level 2 course, whether it's, a university degree, whatever the learning opportunity is. It's really important we reflect upon the content and the knowledge we're being exposed to, and consider, how we can use this or how it applies to the specific environment we are working in within coaches. I think that's the most important aspect.
It's that context, isn't it? I guess it's maybe to take something and look at it and say, okay, how would it relate into the world that I'm in and where I can most benefit
Yeah,
from using it, or not at all. Just because it works over there, it might not necessarily work with my 10 kids that I've got to coach on Saturday or something. So, okay. So I wondered then, really, from you, we'll get some of the things out of the way first, but what do you think are some of the key challenges around coach education? And I don't know if this, you're obviously looking at this, but the key challenge, but specifically if you can, around maybe football and grassroots football, is there things you would say, actually, I can recognise these as real challenges with regards to coaches becoming more educated?
I think one of the real challenges is something which I touched upon already, is the fact that, say a coach is attending a level 1 course for the first time and they've never been on a course before. Even before they arrive on that course, they've already learned to coach and they already have a perception or a belief of what coaching is and what coaching looks like. So they've developed this over time, as their experience as a coach or as a parent, as an athlete, whatever. And when they arrive on that course, the coach educators are providing them with new knowledge, providing them with content, which might challenge their existing understandings and existing beliefs. So already you have this issue where actually these ideas are contradicting one another. And a coach education course, as outlined already, is what, 20, 30, 50 hours long. How will a 20, 30, 50 hour formal course change what a coach has been doing for 5, 10, 20 years? And that's probably one of the biggest challenges. And this is why I think, coach education is quite easy to criticize, because we ask, well, a lot of coaches come off these courses and say, I didn't really learn that much, or they're kind of telling me things which I already know. But, what do we expect the role of coach education to be? And if we expect it to significantly change coaches' practice and beliefs straight away, I think that's unrealistic. If we get coaches to reflect upon the content that they experience on a course and begin to apply it over time, and we can maybe assess coaches learning longitudinally, so over 3, 6, 9 months, maybe we'll begin to actually see that their behaviors have started to change. But if we ask them straight away, what did they learn? Well, they probably won't say that much, and they probably won't understand initially what they've been able to pick up. So I think one of the biggest challenges is that initially I don't think coach education does a great job at getting coaches to reflect upon their learning prior to attending the course. So if maybe the first day of a coach education course could just get coaches to think about their previous experiences and reflect upon them, then at least the tutors and the coach educators will have a better idea of the starting point and what they're working with. So understanding what their coaches currently think good coaching looks like, or what their current practices are, or what their current philosophies are, then at least the educators and the tutors will have a starting point to build from. At the minute, we're assuming coaches are all at the same level, or all, blank slates, and they're ready to accept all this knowledge which we're going to give to them. But we don't appreciate that, they've already spent all these years, minutes involved in the game, involved in football, and already have ideas of what it looks like. So if we overlook those, then, coach education is not going to have as big an impact as it possibly could.
Such a good point, Sam. It does feel like on the courses that I've done previously, good, bad, or indifferent, and most of them have been very good, to be honest with you, through the FA and other ones, but there is almost like an assumption that you come in as a bit of a blank canvas, and we can share the knowledge and the ideas and the practices, and you'll walk away and you'll be converted. And even in the moment, you might feel like that is, but old habits die hard, don't they? And when you're back out there at the weekends or the week sessions and stuff, when you go back to what you're familiar doing, because I guess that's human nature to some extent. But I guess it's ways in which you can get the learners on the course to be open-minded and come in willing to embrace the knowledge and not think they already know it all. But then it's that long-term development to actually make those changes.
You're right in what you're saying. And one of the biggest issues, I think, which we've seen, and I know the FA have changed this over recent years, is that that coach education was criticised for being quite decontextualised. So you'd attend a venue which is away from your coaching environment, and you'd be assessed coaching other coaches on the course. You'd be told in advance what session you're going to deliver. You pretty much spent the whole course knowing how to deliver this one specific session. All the coaches know you're trying to pass a course. So it's so decontextualized, and the assessment is, it's a tick box activity. If you can show these competencies or these skills or these behaviors in a one-off 20-30 minute session, you are deemed competent. Now, I know things have changed drastically over the past 5 years, and the FA have done a great job in moving towards this in situ model and having the tutors come to coaches in their own environment and watching them with their players. And that's been a great move, and that's, you know, been really successful, and no doubt has improved the standard of coaching and the value of coach education. But before, that wasn't there. And one of the other issues that we see quite significantly is that national governing bodies such as the FA will have their own ideas around coaching. You know, and nowadays we see a big promotion of the England DNA philosophy, which, whether you believe the England DNA is good or not is besides the point. That is their model, and that is their belief of what coaching is like, or what good coaching should look like. So a lot of the coach education courses center on this model and getting coaches to engage with this model. And I think, you know, honestly, the principles behind the DNA are fine, and I agree with them. I don't think they're wrong, but we can't ignore the fact that that's still the promotion of one way of doing things. And that's what we need to be careful of, or it goes back to reflecting upon the content which we're being given.
John, that's a really great point, and I've never thought about it. You don't really question the DNA in principles because, you know, it comes from a place where people have studied it and researched it and kind of evidenced it more than I would be able to, you know, argue the case. But also, the principles are pretty good around, you know, playing football, so it's hard to argue with it. However, that said, there are even some things I think, you know, I would move slightly one way or another on certain things because of my experience with the players I've had and what I've seen. Not a million miles away from that. But I coach in the foundation phase in young players. I would imagine if I was coaching an adult team and done that for maybe 10 or 15 years and had a certain way of playing the game that I believed in, it would be a lot harder sell to convince me to buy some of these principles if I've seen success in other ways. So I can imagine, I've never thought about it, but I can imagine that for these people, it is a harder sell. And then you could lose them almost from day one, couldn't you? Because if they don't buy into the principles on day one, well, why am I going to listen to the other stuff? And actually, you don't necessarily need to have the principles to pick up the coaching ideas and techniques, but you could lose them quite quickly if that's kind of the mantra that gets put across too early, I guess.
Yeah, and I think also if we think about practice designs as well, so when I completed my level 1, level 2, sort of 2011, 2012, the level 2 back then, the sessions were technique, skill, game, and you delivered it in that rigid manner. And if you know, they were delivered in such a manner which you thought this is what every coaching session should look like. Start with a technique, start with something skill-based with more opposition, then we move into a games-based practice. In come the youth awards and the youth modules, which again, I think were really good and were really great. And if anyone ever went on the youth module 3, the youth module 3 promoted the use of whole, part, whole. So start with a game, go to a technical practice, then a game. So again, coaches suddenly thought, right, every session needs to be whole, part, whole. And this is the problem. We take everything for granted on courses, and we accept it, you know, the FA are promoting this, so we should believe them. This should be the right way of doing things. And if we don't challenge things or actually ask why, then we get in this position where we're just doing things for the sake of it. And if, you know, I'm not criticizing coaches, but if we actually ask them, what is the purpose of the whole, part, whole? How does that improve, or how does it enhance your players' learning? What are the benefits of it? I generally don't think many coaches would be able to actually say, we the whole part does this. Do you see what I mean? They're just saying, well, we're doing this because we've been told to do it. Yeah. And I think that's a problem. You know, we need to actually look at things, you know, be a skeptic, you know, I don't know what the right word is, but a thoughtful skeptic, perhaps, you know, understand the benefits, but, you know, challenge things.
Yeah, well, you can definitely make your own judgments on it. And it's back to your point, I think, at the start when you said about being magpies, and actually just because something's presented to you in one way, you can tweak and change it. You can adjust it accordingly, and you haven't got to throw everything else out just because you've been shown this new way of doing things. And yeah, and I wonder whether that's, I mean, it's not down to the FA or the courses necessarily to preach that, but I wonder if that would be helpful as well, in the sense of coaches saying, look, we're going to show you a way of doing things. Don't throw out all your wonderful stuff you've been doing necessarily already, but if you can add to it with some of these ideas, then surely that's a good thing for you, and hopefully will help the players that you're in your care, kind of thing. And maybe not just kind of preach one way. And I'm not saying that they do preach things, but sometimes it can feel like you're being shown this is the perfect way of doing it, and anything else kind of isn't correct. And certainly on the old level twos was very much like that. Again, I know they've changed, but the old level two was very much stop, start, technique, practice kind of game. And I think, and that kind of got out of date quite quickly. But the youth mod seemed a bit more a fresher approach. But again, they were quite, you must do it this way.
Yeah, and again, you raise a good point there. Not just the practice designs, the coaching behaviours. You're right. Level 2 and old B license was, stop, stand still, pause where you are. It was very command centred. Yeah. And you move to the youth modules, and it was all about Q&A, question and answers, and the use of challenges and things like that. Informed by discovery learning. So what we'd say in kind of the academic world is kind of, it's informed by constructivist learning principles. So this idea that learning occurs between individuals, it's constructed together. So we ask questions, we get learners involved in the learning process and things like that, which is fine, and that's great. But again, coaches don't know why they're doing it, and command style practice might have its place. Sometimes it might be important to utilize command style, get people to stop, show a demonstration, whatever the case may be. And I think that's the important thing, that there isn't a right way to coach. It's about being exposed to all these different elements, styles, practices, methods, whatever you want to call them. It's about understanding what they are and the pros and cons of each one. And then dependent upon the situation and dependent upon the context, coaches can skillfully decide which ones to use and why, or have a better understanding of which ones they might perhaps utilize and why. So that's my perspective on things. And I think very much previously coach education may have told people to do things a certain way without them realizing. And as we touched upon, Scott, that's a challenge.
Yeah. And so I'm not to get all doom and gloom on this one, but I just wondered what your thoughts with the current situation, how COVID's impacted on coach education over the last 6 months or so, and potentially the next 12 months. Do you see what's the fallout going to be around that? Again, I'm probably thinking more about the grassroots football space, but you can talk about if you want to, impact of COVID on coach education.
I think what we will see, as we've seen in most industries, is a shift towards more online learning, and whether level 1 courses or level 2 courses will be put online, and it might be a series of workshops and modules coaches will work through. It will be a challenge, because I think coaches really value the opportunity to talk to other coaches on courses and to network and pick up bits and bobs from other people. And obviously online learning, you might not get that engagement as much, so I think coaches will miss out a lot. But do I think the theory and the content and these different approaches can be explained and presented in a way which is accessible to coaches online, then yes, I do think it can be. But then again, it'll be up to the coaches to take this content and apply it to their own environment as they wish to do so. And again, that's as long as coaches are still coaching throughout the period. I don't think maybe the shift to online learning will cause as much disruption as maybe people think. I know it's not ideal and it will take a lot of time to adapt, but I still think there's opportunities for learning there, because I think from a higher education perspective, we think of the Open University, obviously in England, where people study degrees online, and they've been doing that for years quite successfully. And people have found that really beneficial, actually being able to engage with the content when they want, or when, that fits around their schedule. It doesn't have to be, you have to attend this weekend or this evening session. So actually that flexibility and accessibility maybe might encourage more people to engage with the content. Maybe the price as well might be reduced. I don't know, it might be something to think about as well. So actually we might see more coaches engaging with content. So that could be obviously a positive from it.
Good point, Tom. Actually, you can easily look at the negatives, can't you, and the challenges around it, but actually there's opportunity as well, right? And hopefully, I guess for me, the only worry would be that people don't do the courses. I think whatever, you just do the courses still, because from my own experience, having a whole bunch of parents go out there on the grass on weekends, best intentions to support the children they're looking after, but without any coach education, even just the level 1, just some introductory courses, is kind of scary, because you can make so many wrong turns through no fault of your own, really, just trying to do the best, that it could be a big step backwards. And trying to correct that path once you've gone off on that journey is a lot harder than trying to start off on the right path from the outset. So hopefully they'll find a way to make it work. I'm sure they will. And like you say, maybe some other opportunities to get more people involved and bring the costs down. That would be good.
Yeah, definitely.
Before we move on, just a little bit about some technical points that I saw on I think it was a blog you wrote. So we'll come to that in a second. But just my last question around kind of general about coach education is, what about other sports? I mean, would you say, have you come across anything which supports the fact that actually if you're going to coach, also look at other sports, because it's quite a good way to learn? So I spend a lot of time coaching football, but maybe I should be looking at what they do out in hockey or tennis or swimming or something completely different. Is that something that you've seen evidence of, or is that not really around what you've looked at?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think in sports tend to have quite close cultures, and football, I think, unfortunately, is one which is probably the most, this is how we do things in football. We're not going to deviate too much from that any further. But a year or two ago, I worked with some colleagues on a small research project where we looked at the impact of a coach development program which brought together coaches from other sports. So topics were quite generic in the CPD workshops, but the coaches within each workshop were from different backgrounds. So we had hockey, fencing, table tennis, football, swimming, tennis. You had coaches from all loads of sports together. And actually, one of the biggest findings that we found from this research is that coaches really valued the opportunity to talk to coaches from other sports, because they didn't have those agendas with them. They didn't have, this is how we do things in football. They didn't have those cultural expectations, if you like, and they could actually just focus on coaching rather than football or just on tennis or whatever sport it may be. So actually, it really opened coaches' eyes to, seeing things differently or seeing things from a different perspective. And they really valued that. And I think certainly there's great potential for, coach education or coach development more broadly in the future to actually utilize cross-sport learning, because, coaching is coaching at the end of the day. And although the contexts and domains might change, there are some fundamental aspects which, are important and apply, coaching behaviors, how you plan and structure a session, athlete learning, all these types of things, how you develop a coaching philosophy. Well, all of these things stay the same, I think, regardless of the sport. But actually being able to tap into the expertise and experience of other individuals is really valuable. I definitely think that's something which has great value, and hopefully maybe we'll see more of in the future again, especially if we see a shift towards online learning. Perhaps that might be more accessible. But yeah, from the coaches in our small study, they really liked that opportunity, talking to coaches who didn't have an agenda, didn't have any of the baggage from their own sport, and opened their eyes to just looking at things from a new way.
I guess the barriers aren't up, are they? So you can, if I'm going to talk to a fencing coach, I don't know nothing about fencing, so I can be honest about that and I haven't got to pretend I know it all already, or I've got my own ideas. So it's amazing what you can pick up, I think, just technical points and communication styles and stuff when you watch coaches in different environments and how they go about things.
No, definitely.
I don't want to get too technical because I haven't got the intellect to handle it. But I did see one of your blogs that talked about sociological frameworks and qualitative research. Now, obviously, qualitative research, I think we're probably okay to some extent. But without blowing my mind too much, Tom, do you think you'll be able to give me an understanding about sociological frameworks and what they are and how they support kind of this whole kind of coach education world?
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing to begin with is that coaching is a social process. You're working with people. There's relationships, there's interactions, there's cultures, there's influences from different factors. Coaching is a social process to start with. And from a research point of view, in football or in sport, we talk a lot about sports psychology quite a lot. That's quite a term. We talk about the psychology of athletes or of coaching, of different, and that's content which is delivered in coach education quite a lot. But we tend to ignore the social side of things and the sociology. And that's an area which I'm quite interested in. So what we've seen from a research point of view, I suppose, is a lot of academics have used concepts and ideas from sociologists and applied it to the sports coaching world to help us to unpack and understand the coaching process in more light. But I think what's probably important just to touch upon is that we can't assume coaching is something which is neutral or benign and is, as I alluded to just then, it's influenced by a range of different factors. So in using sociological frameworks, it helps us to kind of see the bigger picture, helps us to see how, organizational cultures might influence how coaches act and behave, or it might help us to understand how coaches develop their philosophies around coaching, or it might help us to understand why they behave a certain way, or what might be some of the negative, unexpected consequences of their practice designs and mannerisms and things like that, really. So I think, yeah, sociology can help us to see coaching, more than meets the eye, if you like, is the way I'd like to see it, and a nice body of research has looked at micropolitics in coaching, and what that means, I suppose, is that actually coaching is a political act. Sometimes we do things in a certain way to please certain people. So perhaps you're a grassroots coach and you've heard at the weekend some of the parents criticize your coaching or criticize how the team is playing. So what you might do in your next practice is make sure you design your session a certain way, or might act a certain way. Maybe you discipline a child, or because you've heard a parent say, oh, they let so-and-so get off too easy, or whatever it may be. And actually coaching is an act. You're trying to please different stakeholders, whether it's parents, club chairman, athletes, assistant coaches. You're trying to do certain things to get buy-in and to get respect and all these different things. So I think it's really interesting. I probably haven't done it too much justice there, because sociology is such a broad area and we can look at micro, interactions and bigger cultural influences. But for me, it's really fascinating. And I'm not saying all grassroots coaches should look into it in detail, because, they probably don't need to. But again, it's something just to be aware of, when you design a session or when you are coaching, who are you coaching for? Is it actually for your athletes and players, or is it because you're trying to please someone else? Or is it because someone's told you to do something a certain way? Again, it always goes back to me about critically reflecting and being reflexive and looking at things differently. We can't always assume, things are neutral and, everything, like that. Coaching's quite complicated. So sociological frameworks can help explore those and unpack those, I think.
So is it the external factors that can influence you then? Is it the things either conscious or subconscious that happen around your coaching environment that can have impacts on how you approach a session or your coaching principles?
Yeah, I think it could be external factors, but it could also be internal factors as well. It could also be your beliefs about coaching and where they've developed from, the influence of, your upbringing, your gender, ethnicity, your race, your age, your perspectives on coaching, where you've been socialized, where they've come from, how you've been socialized, internal and external factors as well. And as we say, coaching is a social process. So who you are, your beliefs, your philosophy, your mannerisms, that influences your relationships with other people. So all of those factors are really important in coaching, because, coaching is about building relationships with people. It's about building rapport. We're not just working with players, we're working with humans, young humans or adults. It doesn't matter. So how you go about building that rapport, well, coaches do that in different ways. So that's something that's quite interesting as well. Some people might feel they can build rapport by being quite command and being an off in that way. But actually some coaches might try and take more of a paternal stance and, try and give more ownership and autonomy. So there's different ways of doing it, but yeah, internal and external factors can influence.
I guess the challenge then for us as coaches is to kind of recognize those influences and where best manage them. So, if they are going to influence us on how we might put a session together or talk to one of our players, at least be aware of that, because it may be a good influence or it may be something we have to kind of rein back in and manage accordingly. Yeah,
definitely. And again, I think one of the issues with coaching is, sometimes we do things unconsciously, right? It's got, there's a lot of tacit, by tacit, I mean sort of information which we don't know about. It's kind of just natural. It just comes to us. Coaching is quite a natural process. Sometimes we do things without knowing why, because we've always done things this way. We when you're on the grass, in the split second when you see something happen which you need to go and intervene and coach, you just do it. You don't really think about it. It's natural, and we do that as coaches. But it's important, again, if you can take the opportunity to think about, as you say, reflect upon these aspects and understand why we do or what we do and why we do it. But it's very easy to not do that and just keep doing things on a day-to-day basis. And again, there's a great quote which suggests that 10 years of coaching without reflection is just 1 year of coaching repeated 10 times. because you're just doing the same thing again and again and again. So actually, if you're reflecting upon things and challenging things and changing what you do, then, that's hopefully going to be more positive, not only for you as a coach, but more importantly for your players and athletes.
I guess it would make sense to talk a bit about the role of mentoring and how that has a part to play in coach education. Is that something that you look at in what you're doing, major research and stuff? And is it important, the mentorship role? We've had mentors on before from the FA, and I've been mentored myself, and it's been a fantastic experience. But do you see that as part of the coach education framework, if you like? And if so, how important is it?
Yeah, definitely. So as we kind of touched upon, it was quite one of the biggest criticisms of coach education was that it was decontextualized and it occurred away from coach's environment. So that sort of brought about the flaws of coach education, I suppose, resulted in the growth of mentoring. Now, mentoring is something which we know occurs quite a lot in other domains, business, nursing, education. Mentoring, is quite established in those areas. So sports coaching is playing a catch up to those fields, if you like. But actually what we've seen in coaching is the real benefit of having a critical friend, someone with you on the grass who you can bounce ideas off, you can question them, they can question you. You can actually, again, enhance your reflective practice skills and encourage critical reflection. So we've really seen the benefit of that. And that's obviously resulted now in the FA having their in situ visits within coach education, but also the development of the FA Coach Mentor Program, which started in 2013 and unfortunately has come to a close this summer due to COVID, although hopefully it's going to restart again soon in a slightly different format. I'm not quite sure what that'll be yet, but yeah, we've really seen the benefit of having someone there to support you and guide you, if you like. And what we often see within coaching as well is that mentoring is something which, again, is quite informal and happens without realizing. So if you are a grassroots coach and you coach with another mum or another dad or someone else there, you're probably mentoring each other without realizing. You're probably talking about coaching, talking about your team and talking about what you do, and you're actually supporting each other, and you're a mentor to your athletes as well, and you might be mentors to other individuals within your life as well. So mentoring is, people probably don't realize they're involved in it.
You make a great point, Tom. I guess it's one of those ways in which you can help bridge the formal learning, if you like, the courses that you do, and make it more long-term by having a mentor come in and visit you. Because I think one of the dangers in all education is if it's just like a one-stop shop or a one-day or a short, even a 4-week or even a 6-month course, it might have limited long-term impacts. Where if you're kind of revisiting something again and again over a sustained period of time, it's got more chance of influencing your behaviours and maybe doing things differently and hopefully better. Where a mentor is a great way to have that more slightly less, I guess, informal, slightly less formal way of doing that. Is that
yeah, 100%, Scott, because I think before coaches would attend a coach education course and then they'd be left on their own. They've been given this knowledge, been given this information, and now they're out on their own. And coaching can be quite a lonely job. A lot of grassroots coaches do, they might do it on their own. They spend a lot of hours doing the admin side of coaching, a lot of hours on the grass on their own, planning their sessions. So actually just having a friend there or someone there that they know they can go to just to ask a question, or even just to be reassured that what they're doing is good and what they're doing is fine, because that's the problem. I think we as coaches, it's very, we're critical of ourselves, and, actually having someone there just to say you're doing a great job, and actually that was a really good session. I liked what you did with that warm up, or I liked how you delivered that coaching point. That can be really positive and really, improve people's confidence and improve their motivation to keep coaching. We see a lot of coaches drop out of the game because, they don't feel they're good enough, or they don't think, X, Y, and Z. But actually having someone there to retain coaches is really important as well. But you're right, having someone there, you attend a course, and then after the course, you have the tutor or a mentor with you for a couple of weeks, looking at how you are implementing that content within your own environment. And they're giving you feedback, they're giving you advice, and you can ask questions. And you're right, long term, the impact of coach education is going to be greater because of that, and having mentors and having coach developers out in the field. So yeah, I agree with that point.
One thing that maybe we're all guilty of sometimes is looking for excuses not to embrace coach education, or saying I can't get on my UEFA because I don't meet the criteria, or I can't do that. What's your advice to us as coaches around maybe supporting our own education, and what things could we do to be proactive around that?
Well, I think what's been great is due to the circumstances we found ourselves in over the past few months, due to COVID, is that there's been a real surge in the number of resources available to coaches. Now, whether that might be a podcast such as this one, Scott, or it might be online blogs or session plans, there's been lots of opportunities to engage with content online, but there's also been lots of opportunities to pick up the phone and talk to people or re-engage with old networks, old contacts. And actually, it's been a great period now to reflect upon your coaching. Now people haven't been practically coaching as much. I know they have been over the past month or two, but this has been a great opportunity for coaches to sit down and really consider, their philosophies, their practices, and the sort of coach they want to be. So what I would encourage coaches to do is, yes, formal coach education is important. Getting on courses is good and it will help you. But again, reflect upon why you want to get on that course. If you just want to go on your B license so you can walk around and put it in your Twitter bio that you're a B license coach, et cetera, then you're probably not doing that qualification for the right reasons. If you want to do it to pick up new knowledge and to enhance your understanding of different practice designs, then that's great. And, I'd encourage you to pursue that. But how about trying to talk to a current B license coach? How about talking to them about what the course was like? Maybe what they're doing now? How have they found applying the content to their own environment? If you can't get on the course, maybe spend some time talking to other people or looking at B license sessions or whatever it may be. I know that's just one example, but I'd encourage coaches to broaden their networks and try and engage with as many different people from as many different aspects of the game, or even coaches from other sports, as we've already spoken about, Scott. It's a great opportunity to pick up ideas and to understand things a little bit better. So formal coach education courses are just one part of the coaching journey, and they actually form a very small part. So the actual informal stuff, as we know, is not only more significant in terms of volumes of hours, it's also more influential in terms of how it changes your practice or how it impacts your practice. So those are the things I'd encourage coaches to try and look to explore in more depth if possible.
On a purely practical basis, I guess, for coaches, the power of videoing your own sessions, or recording your own sessions, or getting direct feedback, if you're brave enough, from players, parents, co-coaches, whatever else. Is that something you've looked at? Would you recommend it? Is it a minefield? Could we get ourselves in trouble by doing this? Or is it something that's quite a good way to educate yourself without any other resources at all apart from your own time?
I think video feedback would probably be the most significant, if not most powerful, impact on coaches learning, because as I think I touched upon earlier on, coaches have a very low awareness of what they do. As coaches, we think, oh, we're great, we're doing all these different practices, etc. But we sometimes we don't, and we don't realize what we look like and what we say when we're coaching. So I think if there's, you have permission and consent and all those kind of things, the opportunity to be videoed coaching and then to rewatch that video, or to have someone there to talk you through it or to ask you questions, so why did you do that at that certain point? Or why did you talk to Sarah at this point? Or why did you, mention this to Johnny then? That would be such a powerful tool. And you're right, it probably doesn't cost a lot of money to set up some kind of video and device. You see a lot of coaches walk around with GoPros on, or they're mic'd up and they can listen, or have someone with a phone or an iPad, even if it's just for half a session. I think that's a really powerful tool to get coaches to reflect upon their practice and to see themselves from a different light. What do they look like from an athlete point of view? But the other method which you spoke about, actually getting feedback from parents and players as well. Again, that's going to be valuable. We're not sure perhaps how truthful or honest they might be. The players might worry that they don't want to say anything bad about you because, you might not pick them for the next game, but some sort of anonymous feedback would definitely, again, it's all valuable. It's all part of the learning journey. And I think coaches should embrace any opportunities which come their way. We shouldn't turn our nose up at things to get better. So I think that'd be a great tool.
Okay, well, before we go to our final couple of questions, and in fact, we've got you on the podcast and with your academic background as well as your practical background, just a little comment around the use of academic language and whether or not that should be something that puts coaches off. I'm quite brave sometimes to look at blogs and research and try and dig in and understand it. I'm certainly not the sharpest tool in the box, so it takes me a while sometimes to read these things and get my head around it. But should we as coaches be a bit more brave about what we expose ourselves to around the academic side of things and not get put off by some of the language? Or is it down to really the people writing the stuff to try and make it a bit more user-friendly for practitioners?
I think there's probably a dual responsibility there. I think definitely as academics, we have, there are definitely challenges in, we try and publish research papers in journals, and there's definitely a certain style or expectation in terms of the language you use and the writing style and things like that. But we have to ask ourselves, who are we writing for? And if we're just writing for other academics, practitioners, those who, you know, would probably benefit more from the ideas we're talking about, if they can't access it or it's not accessible, then how is our research going to have any impact on practice or on policy? And that's what we really want to see happen. So I definitely think there's value in academics or in researchers either producing maybe one-page summaries or executive documents, or writing as a whole in a more accessible manner and making that more accessible. I think nowadays, if you see on Twitter, there's a lot of academics in sports coaching who are constantly retweeting and promoting their work, and it's probably more accessible in terms of access to papers than it ever has been. You know, if you ever see a researcher talk about their latest work and you don't have access to the paper because you're not tied to an institution, I think if you ask them, most academics would be more than happy to share their work. And again, if you didn't understand something, I think academics again would be more than happy to explain things in a different way or put things in a different light. So I definitely think coaches shouldn't be put off or scared if they see, you know, research, because ultimately that's evidence. That's something that's been collected over time and it might actually really benefit them. So they shouldn't be put off by approaching people in academia or the academic world to understand things a little bit better. But on the flip side, us as academics can definitely we can always do more to promote our work and to ensure the readership or the author or the people who are going to engage with it understand that content as well. So yeah, a dual responsibility, I think there. But ultimately, the research that gets conducted is conducted because we want to try and make things better. So we need practitioners to get to grips and to access that content. Otherwise, things won't change.
Yeah, and embrace it. Well, I'm glad you said that, because I totally agree, and I think we've got to be brave as coaches. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I know there's some out there that really are, and they're all over this stuff. But I think, especially in the grassroots space, we're so busy doing full-time jobs or whatever else, we don't get a chance to look at this wonderful stuff that's out there. But when you do throw yourself in and have a look, actually, it can be a bit of a game changer. You know, not in your own personal confidence, but also in your knowledge and understanding. And there are obviously the written papers out there and things you could find, but there's also some really good webinars and other things out there that if you brought by the topic title, if you give it a go, you suddenly, when you look into it, it's not as complicated as it sounds at first. And actually it sheds some light on some of the things that you're involved in at weekends or during the week that actually can make a difference.
Yeah, I think you're right, Scott. Like webinars or podcasts like your own, this is a great opportunity in a more informal setting to talk about some concepts or talk about research, and that might be a good starting point. And then if something's mentioned, you know, in this podcast, for example, which triggers coaches' curiosity, then I'll be more than happy for people to contact me, for example, to find out more. And I know other academics would as well. So that's probably the hope, maybe looking at webinars, online blogs, podcasts. That might be a nice starting point. And then if you want to engage in content further, maybe you are currently a student at a university or studying at some sort of level and actually want to engage in the content, then by all means, I think that's the way forward.
One question we ask all our guests before we let them go, and you have to answer it. You might have covered it in some of the stuff you said already because you've made some really good points, but just in case you haven't, or there's something else that's on your mind, if there was just one thing that you could change about the world of coaching, what would it be?
I'll probably, like I touched upon earlier, I'd like people to be more open-minded to engaging with coaches from other sports. I think to try and reduce these closed cultures. You know, we work in echo chambers where we talk to people who we know are going to reaffirm our ideas. Sometimes we don't like being challenged or like to see things differently. So I think the coaching world could be more open-minded in embracing new concepts and diversifying, and also coaching can learn from other disciplines as well, education from teaching and vice versa. There's lots of stuff out there, lots of concepts and ideas we can play and experiment with. So the coaching world, if it was more open-minded and maybe more confident to embrace new ideas, I think it would have positive implications.
Good, Tom. Do you think it's going the right way, generally speaking? Are you positive about what you see out there?
Yes, I think from my time as a FA coach mentor, I got the opportunity to watch lots of grassroots coaching. I think over the past 10 years, and it's not just because of how coach education changed or how there's mentoring programs. I do think practice has improved. I do think people's understanding or willingness to see the importance of their own learning and development has definitely increased. So I think if that keeps going the way that it has been, then coaching's only going to get better, because there's probably more support now than there ever has been. So there's more resources now than there ever has been. So actually, the excuses coaches might have for not wanting to engage with content is, apart from time and other factors, is probably reducing. So I'd like to think that, the coach in football particularly, coaching, it's going to keep getting better and better, hopefully.
And Tom, your plans moving forward? I recognise you've obviously just started a brand new role at University of Essex, but just generally speaking, what is your hopes, aspirations for moving forward?
Yeah, so really obviously been at Essex a couple of months now, but really looking forward to starting teaching in the next month or two and working with passionate students about coaching from that academic point of view. But at some point, I'd like to probably get my teeth back into coaching at a practitioner level, wherever that may be, at whatever level, from grassroots to academy. If it fits, or I think it will be a good opportunity, then I'll be more than happy to jump in. But at the minute, my focus is not only on teaching at university, but more my coach developing. So I'm keen to support other coaches to work on my mentoring skills and to look at potential consultancy opportunities to try and enhance and pass on some of my research, some of my ideas, and bridge that theory practice divide, and hopefully make some of our research more accessible to support coaches. So working with other coaches is kind of what I'm keen to do moving forwards.
It sounds fascinating, Tom, and I think I know you're going to be great as a lecturer. The students are going to love you, but the other stuff sounds fascinating too. How do you keep your education going? You've done a PhD now. Where do you go from there?
Well, it's always great opportunities to improve and to learn. I'm keen to talk to other lecturers and keen to engage in research and really broaden my horizons, because there's coaching is a complex topic. It's more than meets the eye. It's not simple, and there's lots of different aspects to explore and to understand further to help people, really. So for me, I keep looking to work on different research projects, working with other academics, working with other practitioners to just understand things further and to enhance my own learning, which I can hopefully pass on to other people.
I guess the good thing about the topic is it's constantly evolving and changing, right? So there's always things to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Coaching goes in cycles. There's different trends or hot topics at different points in time. We're now seeing the use of technology really impact on coaching as well, or different approaches coming in, and how coach education is changing, as we spoke about earlier, towards maybe more online. There's opportunities to evaluate online coach education and see how we can make that better. So it's a constantly evolving topic area, constantly evolving discipline and field as well, which draws upon other fields. So there's always something to do to keep me busy, I think.
So thank you so much for your time today. Before we let you go, look, would you be happy if people want to reach out to you? And if so, how could they best do that?
Yep. So I'm on Twitter and quite active on Twitter. So my handle is just Tom Leeder, at Tom Leeder, LEEDER. That's the key thing we always get mixed up. So at Tom Leeder, and then my email address for Essex is thomas.leeder@essex.ac.uk. But I think you can access my email from my Twitter anyway. So that's probably the most the easiest way to get in contact.
Brilliant. So we'll put the links in the show notes anyway, so people can get those. So thanks so much for your time, Stan. I know how busy you are. You've got so many things going on, especially with the new role there at the university. It's been a real insight to me. I love the topic. Talking to you has been fascinating. I'll be following you closely in what you do. And like, if you're up for it, maybe in 6 or 12 months' time, to come back on, let us know how you're getting on, how the course is going, how the students have been. It would be great to have you back on the show at some point if you're up for that, Tom.
Yeah, definitely, Scott. As I say, that we'll be working on research projects. There's always new things to talk about. How COVID develops, there might be different challenges or even different opportunities for coaches. So as we say, it's an evolving area, and I'll be more than happy to share my opinions and thoughts on things. And yeah, I'm always up for that.
Top man. Thank you so much for your time, Tom. Best luck with the students and the course.
Brilliant. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.